Thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Andy Lynn James. I am the coordinator at the Special Needs and Inclusion Program here at the Trenton MFRC. I am joined today with pediatric occupational therapist Stephanie Nelson. She's here to talk to us tonight about all things sensory. We're gonna have time for a question and answer period at the end. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or in the comments on Facebook if that's where you're watching, or if you'd like it to be a little bit more anonymous, feel free to email me. It's andylyn.j@trentonmfrc.ca. I will put that in the chat in Facebook. But without further ado, Stephanie, I'll hand it over to you. I'm going to turn off my microphone and camera, and then I'll join you at the end for questions.
Sounds great. Thank you very much, Andylyn. So I'm Stephanie. I am a pediatric occupational therapist. I'm going to talk tonight about sensory processing, a little bit about OT, let's kind of dive a little bit deep into the different sensory systems. We'll talk about some things that you can do at home and when you should see an OT. Again, any questions at all, just let me know. I'll try my best to answer them. Sensory processing, it is a complicated topic. There's no kind of black and white answer to a lot of this stuff. Every kid is different. I've been working in peds for a long time now, and I'm still learning new things every day. And then just one little point is that this presentation is not meant to replace therapy. It is just meant to help you learn a few things, help you understand what's going on with your kids, or if you're a teacher, when you're tapping some of your students. We all experience different levels of sensory issues. So you may be able to identify with some of what I'm saying tonight as well. So yeah, if you feel like there's a lot of like red flags that are going up, it might be time to look into seeing an occupational therapist. All right, so starting off with what is OT, occupational therapy. It's a misleading title for sure. A lot of people think that it has to do with finding jobs for people. People hear occupation, they assume that it means employment. We look at occupation as anything that occupies your time. So it could be a hobby, it could be work, it could be school, it could be extracurricular activities, it could be self-care. All of those things occupy your time. So as a pediatric occupational therapist, what I look at is how well are kids functioning in their daily environments. So are they able to engage in the classroom? Are they able to do what they need to do at home? Are they able to sit and have supper with their family? Are they able to go to gymnastics and stand in line and wait their turn on the trampoline or whatever it is that they need to do? So when kids are having trouble with that, they often come to me, and that's when I start doing my assessments and trying to figure out, what is going on, what's happening at like a lower level, so at a neurological level, in order to help with those higher level skills. So I really like this quote, medicine adds days to lives, occupational therapy adds life to days. So today we'll talk about, like I said, sensory systems, why it's important to have a regulated sensory system, what that optimal zone of arousal is, and that can change depending on kids, or depending on the kid and depending on the situation. We'll talk a little bit about sensory diet, some suggestions for home. We'll touch on some trauma, how that affects the sensory system. And yeah. So let's start by just talking about the senses. So most people at some point in middle school or high school science learn about the 5 senses. So we have vision, we have smell, we have taste, touch, and hearing. So vision, when I look at vision, I'm looking to see how good their acuity is. So can they see far away? Can they see close up? Are they really sensitive to light? So are they constantly like shading their eyes? Are they squinting? Do they prefer to wear a baseball hat or wear their hood to shade their eyes a little bit? And then the third part is how well their eyes work together as a team. So are they are they able to look up and look at the board and look down and look at the paper and see, like, be able to focus instantly on those two things? Are they able to follow a moving object as it moves across their visual field? Are they able to track a ball coming towards them in gym class? Those kinds of things. Smell, it's not usually a big concern for a lot of people, but it is important to note that smell is actually the fastest way to calm down a nervous system if somebody's in fight or flight. So if you have a kid who often goes into fight or flight, having something that is associated with a good memory, so maybe something that smells like vanilla because, baking, like baking with grandma or whatever. The olfactory nerve is one of the ones that goes directly into the limbic system as opposed to having to get rerouted through the brainstem and back up. So it's quick. For taste, are they struggling with sour or with sweet or those kinds of things? More often, I kind of lump oral into that as well. So are they always chewing on things, like their shirt, their sleeves, their hair, pens, toys? Are they still sucking their thumb? Are they biting their nails? Those kinds of things. Touch, there's tons of different types of touch. So there's light touch, there's deep touch, there's vibration, there's hot, there's cold, all of those kinds of things. The light touch pathway actually runs right alongside the pain pathway. And so sometimes kids that I see will get those pathways crossed. So light touch, just like a light tickle, can actually be perceived as pain for some of these kids. And so that will put them into high alert. So just be aware if some of your kids are sensitive to touch. Hearing, I'm looking for things like, are they responsive to really high frequency noises, low frequency noises, loud noises? Like, are they having a complete meltdown every time they're in a public bathroom and one of those automatic toilets flush, or the hand dryer comes on, or the fire alarm goes off? Things like the blender, the vacuum, all of those kinds of things. I also consider auditory processing disorder. So are they able to filter out background noise in a busy environment? There's two other senses. Actually, there's three other senses. I'm going to talk about two of them right now. So these are senses 6 and 7. Vestibular is how well we know if we're moving in space. So are we moving front and back? Are we going side to side, up and down? Or are we moving in some kind of a rotational pattern? So are we spinning in a circle? Are we spinning around something? Are we on a swing and doing an arc? This is a really important system for knowing where we are in space and feeling safe in our body. A lot of the kids that I see are constantly moving. They're those kids that can't sit still. It's a vestibular thing. Usually it's under responsive. And so we need to give them more of that vestibular input in order to keep them calm. And then proprioception is the muscles, joints, and tendons in the body. So I can put my arm back here, not look at it, put my hand in a fist, and know exactly where my wrist is, my fingers are, that my thumb is overlapping without looking at it, because of the information that my muscles, joints, and tendons are sending to my brain. Proprioception is the one when we talk about heavy work and use weighted blankets. It's the system that's being activated, and it's a really good tool for calming the nervous system, and it's very long lasting. So a little bit of proprioception input can go a long way in calming down the nervous system. The 8th sense is called interoception. So this one I've been hearing more and more of lately, parents coming to me and asking me for help with interoception. And that is knowing what's going on inside the body. So knowing, are we hungry? Are we thirsty? Are we hot? Are we cold? Do we need to go to the bathroom? Those kinds of things. A lot of kids that I work with do not have that level of understanding. It's kind of like their body ends here, so they don't get information from the lower part of their body. I just want to say an extra thing about the vestibular system. It's probably my favorite sense. I love working on this stuff with kids. Probably 90% of the kids that come into me have something going on with their vestibular system. So as you can see here, there's a picture of the ear, and then there's like the middle ear, we have our eardrum, and then as you go into the inner ear, we have these little tiny circular canals. It says vestibular system balance organs in brackets. So those are the semicircular canals, and just below that is a saccule and utricle. And those are the receptors that tell us how we're moving. So that is the vestibular system. That system has direct connection to the eyes. So kids who have a hard time with vestibular often have a hard time with printing, with reading, with copying from the board, because the vestibular system acts as a seat for the eyes. So if vestibular is kind of all over the place, then the eyes are going to be all over the place too, and it makes it really hard for them to work together, visual teaming. So it's important to rule that out when you're looking at things like school skills. So printing, reading, writing, copying, all that kind of stuff. It has direct connections into the postural system. That's why these kids are often moving around. Sometimes they fall out of their seats. I'll get these kids to do like a Superman, so lay on their belly and lift their arms and legs up. Oftentimes they can't do that because they just don't have that information going into their postural system, so down their neck and into their upper back. It has direct connections into the limbic system, which is our seat for emotional regulation. So again, a lot of these kids have emotional regulation issues. They're all over the map. They seem like they're having outbursts all the time. And if you think about it, if you don't know where you are in your body and your environment, it's going to be really scary. And so it's hard to know what's going on. The last direct connection that it has, and you can see that it's actually physically touching, is the auditory system. So it touches the cochlea. It shares the same fluid as the cochlea. And so those kids who really like bass, those angsty teenagers who are sitting in the car and the bass is just going, it's actually activating the vestibular system and calming down the nervous system. So working on those two systems together is really common because they're connected. They treat each other kind of. So just a few quotes about sensory, sensory integration. It's the brain's ability to take in, process, and organize sensory information that we perceive through different sensory systems in our bodies. And through our senses, we develop an understanding of our world. Oftentimes this occurs without us even being aware. So when everything is going well, sensory integration, it takes in all of this information through our eyes, through our nose, through our mouth, our ears, our muscles, our joints, our vestibular system, and it gives us an accurate representation or perception of the world. So essentially, there's some kind of a stimulus. Our sensory system takes it in, sends it to our brain creates a response through the motor system, and then we have a reaction. So a really simple example would be you put your hand on a hot stove, your brain gets the message that, hey, this is hot. Our brain is going to say, we need to remove this from the stove. It sends it back to our hand, and we take our hand off. Obviously, that happens within a split second, but that's what's happening. Just really quickly, the roles of the sensory system. So one is to keep us safe. So fight, flight, or fright. So if we see something coming at us, if we hear somebody coming towards us in a dark alley, we're going to go into fight, flight, or flight. With discrimination, sensory system is telling us what is it. So it's telling us information about our world, is it soft, is it hard, does it smell bad, those kinds of things. And then sensory modulation and regulation. So sensory information provides us an appropriate level of arousal within the nervous system and is essential to the development of self-regulation. So self-regulation, co-regulation is a whole other topic on itself. But basically, it's a learned skill that our nervous system tells us, should we react to something? Should we not react to something? Like, oh, hey, I've heard this sound before. It's not harmful. Or, oh, that's a new sound. Maybe I should react to it. It's taking in all that information and saying how we should react to it. So like I said earlier, we are all sensory beings. We all do things to help to regulate our nervous systems. So some people need to go to the gym in order to feel calm. Some people, if they're sitting in a meeting, will tap their feet, those big hugs that are really relaxing. A lot of adults will chew gum or chew their pens or pencils, that kind of thing. Lighting candles to help create some sense of relaxation. All things that we do using our nervous system or using our sensory system to help keep us calm. Or regulated, I should say. That being said, there are also things that can annoy all of us. So for me, it's the feeling of foam. I hate it. It's like nails on a chalkboard for me. I cannot stand the way that feels. Watching people chew with their mouth open. Some people don't like the feel of certain foods in their mouth. So all of those things are sensory reactions. Generally, they're not enough to impact us on a daily basis. But they're all things that we're pretty aware of for the most part. When it does start to impact us on a daily basis, that's when I step in, or that's when an OT steps in and starts looking at sensory processing and trying to figure out what do we need to do to help you become more functional in your day. So poor sensory processing difficulties occur when the brain is not able to take in, organize, and interpret sensory input effectively to meet environmental demands. So just what I was saying in different words. So you would have a typical stimulus. It would go into your sensory system, go into your brain, get processed differently, and then your motor output reaction would either be too big or too small. So somebody might come up behind you, touch you lightly on the shoulder, and you might completely respond and freak out. On the other hand, you might be sitting in a classroom and the fire alarm might go off and it might not even phase you. You might not even get up to move. So different ends of the continuum. So just the importance of sensory regulation. I like to look at it as a tree or as a house. Sensory processing, sensory regulation is the foundation. So it's the root system. It's the foundation of what everything else that's happening in our brains. So without proper sensory integration, sensory regulation, we don't have things like body awareness, postural security, motor planning, attention, cognition, social skills, language skills. All of those things are impacted by what's happening with our sensory system. Another way to look at it is looking at it as a pyramid, sorry. So again, sensory is down here on the bottom, and then higher level skills build up so that academic learning is at the top. So just quickly going over optimal zone of arousal. Some of you may have heard of programs that target this kind of thing. So there's How Does Your Engine Run? There's Zones of Regulation, both programs that are aimed at looking at getting kids into that optimal zone so that they can perform well at school. So we've all had days when we're either over aroused, we're under aroused, and it's really hard to get down into that kind of optimal zone. Sometimes it's okay to be in that over aroused zone. So like if you're gearing up for a big sports game, or it's okay to be in the under aroused zone. So like if you've just finished a yoga class and you're super zen and relaxed, like it's okay to fluctuate between these zones, but we don't want that happening in the middle of a school day or while you're at work, those kinds of things. So again, if you're in that over aroused, you're usually pretty antsy, there's lots going on, like you can't really calm yourself down. We want to bring you down into that optimal zone. If you're under aroused, you're feeling tired, you don't have a lot of energy, and we want to bring you up into that optimal zone. So just a few quotes. I found these some years ago, but they're on a sensory website by adults. So these are all adults who struggle with sensory processing. And they had just written down what their experiences were like. So again, everybody's experiences are different, but these are just good ways to kind of start wrapping your head around these experiences. So imagine walking into a room filled with 25 72-inch flat screen TVs that all have super high definition and surround sound, but they're all playing different movies on full blast at the same time. And the door is locked, so you can't get out. Feeling anxious? Now imagine getting the same reaction just from being at the grocery store and having to drive home with your infant in the back seat. Yeah, that's what it's like. Oops. So the next one, sensory overload feels like, for me, everything is crawling. My skin is crawling, noises feel like they're crawling in and out of my ears, blood is skittering out of my heart, air is crawling out of my lungs and racing up and down my throat. Another person said, it's like being inside a pinball machine. So those are pretty great descriptions of what it's like to be on overload. Just way too much sensory information coming in and not getting filtered out appropriately. All right, so getting into some recommendations. So now that we've identified what sensory processing issues are, what the different sensory systems are, this is more the part that, this is what I focus on in therapy, things that you can do at home, those kinds of things. So sensory diet is one of the tools that we'll use as OTs. Has nothing to do with food. It's kind of a misleading term, and I do run into some confusion about it every once in a while. Essentially, it's named diet because just like a diet, just like you would eat breakfast and have a snack and have lunch and a snack and supper, you want those same little bits of sensory input throughout the day. So you want to have some every couple hours throughout the day, rather than doing it all before school or all after school. You need to get it spread out so that you have like a nice even input throughout the day. So depending on the kid, these examples would be different. But for this example child, in the morning before school, eating crunchy foods would be helpful for them, sucking yogurt or a smoothie through a straw, so they're activating these muscles, they're working on deep breaths, those kind of thing. Eating chewy dried fruit, so really getting that deep input into their jaw. So this must be a kid who has a lot of oral seeking. And then on the way to school, carrying a heavy backpack or pulling a backpack on wheels, listening to calming music with headphones. So there we have some proprioception with a heavy backpack. We have an auditory input with some music. At school before the bell rings, avoid standing in line with other kids. So avoid being touched and bumped and jostled around. So that would be a tactile tool. So kids probably tactile defensive. Helping the custodian with the teacher, etc., with tasks such as taking chairs off the desks, pushing a broom, cleaning the whiteboard. So all things that are using the muscles of the body. Having the office provide heavy work for the child. So carrying paper to the photocopier and moving textbooks around, those kinds of things. So yeah, just working on different sensory systems, getting them all activated regularly throughout the day. I don't know if many people have heard the term snoozlin. It's kind of like the original sensory room. It's a brand name. It's very expensive. It's usually the rooms are all white and they have lots of lights and bubble tubes, and like it's very, very expensive. But I'm just going to show you these pictures so that you can get ideas of things that you can do at home. So like there's a disco ball up here. You can find disco balls fairly inexpensively now. Like these string lights, you could use string light, like just Christmas lights, that kind of thing. There's a little swing down here in the right-hand corner. So yeah, things that you can recreate at home. So here's another one. So if you have a space at home, you want to create some kind of a sensory space, you can use a closet, you can create a sensory corner in the bedroom, you can go under the stairs, you can kind of have to get creative with it. Here's another example. So you see how the colors change. Usually the colors can be controlled by the person using the room, just depending on if they're under aroused, if they're over aroused, that kind of thing. So this would be an example of a sensory room at home. And you need to, like, you can go on Pinterest and look at all these fantastic ideas, but if you're not meeting the needs of the child, then you're not really helping them out. So if your kid's a heavy work seeker, they like using their muscles, putting in like weighted balls or those kinds of things. If they're seeking vestibular input, putting in a trampoline, putting in a swing, those kinds of things. Another example, sensory at home, it's in a little tent. So that's one way to do it. And then here are just some ideas between high budget and low budget tools. So high budget would be a store-bought ball pit. A low budget would be taking a small swimming pool and putting balls in it, or using a mesh bag and putting balls in that, and the kid can climb into the bag. That's what I have, like a big bag that I use in my clinic, and kids crawl in, and they love it because then it gives them boundaries as well. It gives them like a nice cozy feeling. So a lot of the high budget swings are like the therapy ones specifically are quite expensive, but you can recreate the same kind of idea using a rocking chair or an exercise ball. Those bubble lamps, so these guys here, these red tubes with the bubbles in it, they're like thousands of dollars, but you can use Christmas lights, you can use a lava lamp, crash pads, again, hundreds of dollars. You can take a duvet and fill it with body pillows or blankets or whatever you have laying around, and you have a crash pad. Instead of fiber optic lights, you can use a flashlight. Instead of specialty fidget toys, go to the dollar store and check out what they have there. I found lots of great things at the dollar store over the years. Instead of using a diffuser, you can use essential oils on cotton balls. So I have little tiny jars with cotton balls that I just drop the essential oils in. I have some parents that know that their kid responds really well to smell, and so the moms will just stick a couple of those in their purse, and then if the kid's starting to get overwhelmed or dysregulated while they're out, the mom will just grab that and let them sniff it for a little bit, and it will calm them down. There are things that there are like big vibrating mats that you can put your body onto. You can use a handheld massager, so like one of those little jitterbugs that you usually see at like Christmas time, the stocking stuffers, or a vibrating toothbrush even. You can use it on the outside of the mouth, those kinds of things. Weighted blankets, they're pretty common now, but they can still be quite expensive. You can make a weighted snake by putting like aquarium gravel inside of the tube sock and knotting it. And you have a weighted tool that you can put on the lap or put over the shoulders. Gel pads can be recreated by putting hair gel in a Ziploc bag. You can put pom-poms, or you can put eyeballs and draw pictures of monsters on the outside of it and move the eyeballs into the monsters. You can do tons of stuff with that. Instead of a squeeze vest or like proper compression clothing, you can use tight-fitting spandex clothes. So like Under Armour, that's a couple sizes too small, or like those rash guard bathing suit tops, you can use those. Instead of buying weighted balls, you can use Pilates balls, or you can make your own just by taking a ball, cutting the top off, filling it with sand, and then super gluing the top back onto it. So sensory bins, these are probably the most common sensory tool that I see at home. So this would be like a tactile tool. So great if your kid has tactile aversion. Also really fun. Kids really like this stuff. It's not the most powerful sensory tool out there. I prefer to focus more on proprioception and vestibular because I find those are the powerhouses of the sensory system. But you can absolutely do sensory bins. You can fill them with whatever you want: sand, beans, pasta, water. You can make different themes with them. So like you can see down here, there's like a dino theme, and then this one's like an under the water theme. You can have like cups and spoons and all kinds of stuff. Kids generally have a lot of fun with these. So like I was saying, proprioception and vestibular, so that muscle, joint, and tendon system and that movement system, those are the biggest bangs for your buck. So heavy work, proprioception would be playing with weighted balls, carrying groceries, laundry baskets, etc. Rough and tumble play. So boys and dads tend to be really good at this naturally. They like that rough and tumble play. Climbing up things, using those muscles, like going across monkey bars, those kinds of things. And then for vestibular, for movement, swings, things that spin, so like merry-go-rounds at the playground, using scooter boards, trampolines, bouncing on exercise balls, and going down slides are all ways to activate that vestibular system. Obstacle courses are another fun way to incorporate the like sensory input at home. You can do lots of movement, lots of heavy work with it. You can design it based on your kid's need, based on their ability. So younger kids versus older kids. You can use what you have available to you. Like the options are endless. I have a few examples. Hopefully these guys will work. I don't know if I can use this. There we go. So you can see here, this one is just shaped like a square and it's for quite a young child. So it looks like they took the side of the crib and then like a carpeted piece of wood. I forget what some of the other pieces are, but this kid is really learning how to use their body. They're getting a lot of proprioceptive input, getting some vestibular input as he slides down. Walking across that uneven surface is working on proprioception. And then working on balance, going across on the skateboard. Sorry, my little guy's crying. I don't know if you can hear him. Yeah, and then this kid is just doing this little circuit over and over again until they get bored. But you can tell he's really working on a lot of skills here. His head is down when he's crawling, so he's getting vestibular input. This is a fun one. Whoops. So here's another video. This one's sponsored by OxyClean, but they give you some good ideas for outside. I know it's kind of the wrong time of year for that now, but you can still incorporate some of this at home. So running through hula hoops, having them pull them up over their body, so working on some body awareness as well. And then going over and under pool noodles. So vestibular input, proprioceptive input, body awareness, trying not to hit that pool noodle. I like this one for body awareness. Again, you're getting your head in different positions. Lots of fun ideas here. And then crab walking, so some nice proprioceptive input, getting input into the shoulders, the wrists, the hands, the elbows, all of that kind of stuff. That can help with fine motor skills as well. And then this one, she explains it, so I'll let you just listen to the first part of it.
Okay, so first I explain the course. Crawl through the tunnel, okay? Pretend this floor is like hot lava here. And then we climb over the beanbags, and then you guys get to jump on the trampoline into the mountain. Hopefully this goes without saying, but make sure there are no sharp edges or corners. I knew you loved that part for it. And then after you're done with that, we're gonna safely drive the baby through the cone, okay? And then fight your way through the balloons.
So some light touch there even with the balloons.
Find the carpet and make a ball into the bucket. Oh, pick up the tray, and you're gonna walk the tightrope, which is a rolled up carpet. Oh.
That's good for those really impulsive kids too, being able to hold something really still and not have it fall over.
And then if you have more than one kid, it's nice to have a stopwatch or a whistle so that everyone's into it. 1, 2, 3. Those pets, please turn first.
I love the kid with the whistle in the back. you can see how kids would have a lot of fun with these kinds of activities.
Next up was Ford.
Yeah. And I couldn't find the video for this one again, but this was a pretty intense one. I think it was one that a dad did when he was home alone with the kids. And so he had like 2x4s duct taped to countertops, and he really went all out, but the kid is doing great. She's balancing. So yeah, you can really like go to the level that your kid's at, have that like just right challenge. So you don't want to go too hard, but you don't want to go too easy either, because then they just get bored. So Lycra is one of my favorite therapy tools. And a picture a few slides from here. I'll show you. Oh no, I don't have it in here. Just kidding. So I have a giant Lycra hammock that hangs from the ceiling. It's 4 layers, and so kids can climb up and then go down into the next layer, and then climb up and get back to that top layer. And they can go down to the bottom and climb back up. It's giving that vestibular input. It's giving that proprioceptive input. So you're getting like a lot of that tightness. They're getting like really good awareness of where their body is, and they feel really calm when they get out. So you can use it either like as a hammock, like this little girl is doing down here in the purple. You can get things like body socks. They like zip up, and kids can like look like little Gumbies kind of thing. They can push against it. They can hop in it. Some kids are obsessed with those. They love them. I use a stretchy tunnel quite a bit in therapy. Sometimes I'll get kids to push a weighted ball through it as well. Sometimes I'll move it back and forth, just depending on what I'm working on. But that one's a lot of fun for kids as well. It's easy to make. You just buy a length of like bathing suit material, so something with a 4-way stretch, and sew up the long end, and then you have a tunnel. Super, super easy. You can also use just a plain sheet of Lycra, put it over the shoulders, and then like have them sit on it, and then pull it around their feet and just kind of like hug themselves into it. It just kind of recreates that womb-like feeling that's really safe and secure and regulating. You can go to Fabricville, Fabricland. I always go to the remnants section and get stuff that's on sale. It's like $12 a meter kind of thing. So suspended equipment. A lot of my clients will hang a swing from an exposed beam if they have an unfinished basement. This was in my old clinic, which was in the basement of our house in Petawawa. We had a drop ceiling, so I was able to move the tiles out of the way, put some brackets in between 2 of the floor joists, and then have eye hooks that came down. I put them through the tile so that it was a nice finished look, but I could still just hook using a carabiner. A lot of it I just get through like rock climbing providers or retailers. So using like daisy chains and carabiners, spinners, those kinds of things. The spinner I got from Amazon for like $16, and it adds a totally new element to the swings, especially this green one. It's just from Costco. Another option is, this was like a vendor show that I did a while back. I used our outdoor patio swing kind of thing. I just used the frame from that and hung the swing off of that. It worked great for what I needed it for. So that's something that you could do at home as well. And then this picture here on the right, again, it's just the clinic that I had in our old house in Petawawa with the swing hanging from the ceiling. So you can see the yellow things they're called daisy chains, and they're used for rock climbing. This was a homemade swing, so you can easily make stuff at home as well. Just a quick touch on why it's so important to get outside and play outside versus staying inside all the time. When you're outside, you're getting lots of great visual input, lots of sunlight. It's constantly changing as the sun goes behind clouds, so your eyes are constantly adjusting to that light. You're getting auditory, the birds are singing. There's actually some great research that looks at the effect of birds singing and nervous system regulation. Angela Hanscom talks about it in her book, Balanced and Barefoot. You get the smell, so like fresh cut grass or pine trees or whatever is in your area. So you're getting that olfactory input, you get different touch, especially if you're in your bare feet, you're getting lots of great tactile input into your feet. You're touching trees, you're touching grass, you're touching sand, all of those kinds of things. If you're more likely to engage in vestibular play if you're at a playground or even running through the woods. In this picture, he's on a rope swing, he's getting that big swing into the water. He's getting proprioception because he's using his muscles to hold on to that rope. He's probably going to taste the water as he lands in the water. That cold water is going to be really alerting. So having even a cool breeze is alerting, having a warm breeze, like all of those different features of being outside is really like an all-encompassing sensory experience. You can't tease sensory experience. You can't tease out individual sensory systems when you're outside because it's such a global experience. So another example, playing in the snow, he's touching cold things. Again, lots of visual input, so the sun bouncing off the snow, the smell of like that crisp, fresh air, pushing the snowball, proprioceptive input, vestibular input because he's bent over, he's really moving forward, the sound of his feet crunching against the snow, auditory input. So lots of input there. Versus inside on a tablet, he's sitting still, he's not using his muscles and joints, he's not getting proprioceptive input, he's getting some auditory input from one direction, and he's getting some visual input. I've read a few articles lately that talk about visual input and like scrolling or like TV shows that move really fast. So TV shows from the like 80s and 90s only changed images every like 5 to 10 seconds. If you look at shows now, they're changing images, changing angles, that kind of thing, much, much quicker. I think CoComelon, it changes every like 1.5 to 3 seconds kind of thing. So the kid is constantly getting new visual input. And so the brain is trying to keep up with that. And that actually activates that vestibular system. So when you take that tablet away from the kid, they go into like almost a withdrawal and there's a backlash. And they're trying to get that same level of activation, which then leads to like a lot of hyperactivity, a lot of running around, jumping, crashing into things, trying to get that same input that they were getting from that quick moving, flashy screen. So something to keep in mind, if your kid's having a really hard time regulating, just take a look and see how much screen time are they getting throughout the day? Are they balancing it with really good quality play using those sensory systems that we've talked about? If you find that there's too much screen time happening in the run of a day, try cutting back a little bit and you may see some really big improvements. I just want to talk really briefly about trauma. So current thinking is that many sensory processing issues are results of trauma. So that can be prenatal, so before the child's even born, at birth, if it's a traumatic birth, coming into the world fighting for your life is a very traumatic experience. So that can be something that can lead to priming the nervous system to be on guard for things. Epigenetic and intergenerational. So they've done research looking at the descendants of Holocaust survivors and seeing that they demonstrate the signs of trauma as if they were the ones living through that experience. So it gets passed down epigenetically. And then looking at the adverse childhood experiences study, Nadine Burke-Harris has done a ton of interviews. She has a TED Talk talking about adverse childhood experiences and how they are tightly correlated to even physical health later on in life. So things like stroke, heart attack, cardiovascular disease, cancers, all of those kinds of things are very tightly correlated with childhood traumas. There was a really interesting study just going back to prenatal trauma, an interesting study looking at women who were pregnant and were in the Twin Towers the day that they were struck. And those kids were, I think, 80% more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD by, I forget what the age was, but like 8 or 10 years of age, something like that. So there's some research out there that's supporting that trauma can have these effects on us. Much of it is out of our control. We can't beat ourselves up over our reactions to trauma. The best way to help with trauma is to build that resilience through connection and meaningful relationships. Again, co-regulation, whole other presentation on its own, but just being there and being able to have those conversations with your child. So when to see an OT? If a child's unable to do what they want or what they need to do throughout the run of a day, so things like performing daily hygiene tasks, paying attention in school, going to the grocery store without having a meltdown, tolerate clothing, tags are a big issue for a lot of kids, unable to eat certain food groups, things that are really affecting function and are really causing a lot of distress in a family unit's life. Oftentimes a kid will come into me and the whole family is just completely dysregulated because of this kid's reaction to sensory input. So definitely a good time to come see an OT. All right, so that is what I had ready for today. I'm just wondering what questions everybody has now. We have a bit of a discussion as well.
Yeah, for sure. So we did get a few questions and people registered. So one I have here, sorry, let me just pull it up. They want to know why their son likes running water so much, what that might mean, and what they could do about that.
Ooh, I feel like I need a lot more info. It could be a visual thing. A lot of kids like watching water come out of the tap. It's constant. It could be like a stim if it's a child who has autism. So it could be some kind of what we call a stim, so something that helps them regulate their nervous system. So you'll see like hand flapping or like rocking, those kinds of things are stims. So it could be something like that. They could like the sound of it. The sound of it could be helping to block out background noise. If it's a really busy household, kids will often use things like running water, or they'll hum, or they'll click or talk or do something to help drown out that background noise. So it could be something like that. It's hard to say without actually knowing the kid, but there's definitely sensory reasons why they might like it.
Okay. And then I have here, my son is 14 and lives with ASD. He seems to have sensory issues over eating foods and eats very limited foods. Any tips and tricks? They said they've tried many, many things over the years.
So again, picky eating could be its own presentation. I've done hour-long presentations just on picky eating. I do like hour-long sessions with families just looking at picky eating. So it's a very complicated topic. Getting to the root is definitely a big part of it. ASD, it's not uncommon for kids to be picky. My biggest advice is to make sure that the family is having like united meals together. So everybody's sitting down. It's a nice, calm environment. There's no pressure to eat certain foods, because as soon as somebody feels pressured, their stress levels go up, cortisol hits the bloodstream. They're going to start shutting down. They're going to go into fight or flight or freeze. Blood is going to get diverted away from the stomach and into the arms and legs, prepping them to run or to fight. They're not learning at that point. They're not going to feel comfortable enough to take risks when it comes to food. I always say to slowly build up exposure to foods. So you can even do it through play. I know he's 14, so he's probably not, was it 14 or 11?
14.
14, okay. So I know he's probably not super into like playing, but if he is, you could like make Play-Doh and like squish raspberries into it. Or if he's like super into trains, you could build trains out of carrot sticks, or like, use it as play. You could paint with food, those kinds of things, so that there's no pressure to consume food, but that he's getting that exposure, he's getting more comfortable with it, and then slowly introducing it into his diet. I don't believe in hiding foods in like sauces and smoothies. I always want a child to know what they're eating so that they have that control. As soon as they find out that they're hiding things or that there's something hiding in their food, you've lost that trust with them and you're just going to go back to square one. So really taking a nice relaxed approach, knowing that it's a long road and he might be 20 before he decides to eat a carrot, but as long as it comes eventually, that's progress. And that is what we're here for.
Perfect. So you mentioned screens and screen time. That always seems to be a big issue. Is there a time limit that you would recommend?
Yeah, so the American Association of Pediatrics, I believe it's them that have the screen time guidelines. I don't know them perfectly right offhand. I know under 2, I believe, is no screen time throughout the day, and then it's like an hour and then like 2 hours kind of thing. You can find it all online. I don't have it right in front of me right now. Obviously, there's, depending on the kids, some kids can tolerate more, some kids can't tolerate any. I've worked with kids who, as soon as they have screen time, they're totally different kids. They just like, they're off the wall kind of thing. So it really depends on your kid. These are just guidelines. I was going to say something else and it has completely slipped my mind. Also consider how much screen time they're getting at school, because there's a lot of screen time happening at school. I've been in classrooms where they're playing YouTube videos throughout lunch, so it's constantly on. Like kids are using tablets and Chromebooks and those kinds of things in the classroom. All counts as screen time. One way to kind of not negate it, but to help with that screen time is to sit down and watch it with them on a TV, as opposed to having it like super in their face. And then you're getting that emotional connection piece at least. So if your kid is at least a little bit patient, you can sit down and ask them what they're watching. I know some kids would be like, oh, go away, you're annoying me, but you can try.
And is there a time of day when they should just not be on it at all?
Before bed, for sure. At least an hour, ideally 2 hours before bed is no screen time. That blue light is really detrimental to melatonin, which is the chemical that signals our body that it's time to fall asleep. So if you're on screens late at night, especially if there's no blue blocker, then your melatonin isn't getting signaled to start being produced. And so it's harder to fall asleep and you don't get as good a quality of sleep. So basically, once the sun starts setting, you want to stop using screens as much. There are things that you can use. I know Apple has like built-in like apps where you can control, like I have mine, it's kind of like a pink setting. So instead of being like a really bright white blue, it's more of like a pinkish color on my screen. So you can do something like that to help with it. If you're a kid or if you wear prescription glasses, you can get blue blockers and it's almost like a yellowish film on your lens. So that's one way to help combat it as well.
Okay. And then I had another one. If someone was trying to make their own kind of little sensory room, what are like the top things that you would recommend, or would that really vary depending on what the child needs, or is there like a top 3 that you would really say you should have?
So definitely depends on the kid. I know I hate that answer. It's the worst. I remember getting it in school all the time. But yeah, it definitely depends on the need of the kid. I find swings are a safe bet because if you're like hesitant with movement, you can use it to like slowly build up to tolerating movement. If the kid needs a lot of movement, they can go to town and like swing themselves or spin themselves or do whatever. I really like these, like this purple kind of swing. So that's an aerial yoga hammock. So those are great because you can stretch them out and lay flat in them. You can stand on them. You can do flips in them. Like they're very like diverse swings. So those are great. I really like using Lycra, like a Lycra tunnel or even just a sheet, something that they can really wrap around their body and push into. And then I'm trying to think of a third one. I would look at lighting as well. I know even for myself personally, lighting has a huge impact on how I'm feeling. Really bright lights are like, they're just irritating to my nervous system. Some kids can hear different frequencies from lights. So like fluorescent lighting can be like irritating for kids. There's like a hum that happens. So just looking at different options for lighting, using like Christmas lights instead of overhead lights, that kind of stuff. But yeah, it really depends on your kid and knowing what they need.
And then I just had another one come up. Do you find like if the sensory needs will change, like do you find a child doesn't necessarily always have the same needs, or does it change often?
Yeah,
like, they go out and buy all this stuff for the sensory room and then it's like, no, they need something else now. Or
yeah, so as they get older, kids who don't go into therapy and like who don't get like an active therapeutic approach, even kids who do, but kids will learn how to compensate for some of their sensory challenges. So they, as a toddler, may have sensory issues, and then as they grow up, they may seem to grow out of them because they've come up with ways to cope with them, ways to deal with it. So like squeezing your jaw can help with like auditory dampening, so making noises less loud, those kinds of things. They just kind of figure those out naturally. So the things do change as kids get older. Generally, you don't just like stop having certain sensory like reactions, I guess. But yeah, again, depends on the kid and depends on the like therapies that they have and the compensatory techniques that they come up with, those kinds of things. Generally, if you go out and buy a bunch of stuff, it'll still be used, right? Like it's still a fun space to play in, and after a tough day at school to go in and chill out in, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's not, I don't think it would ever be like a big waste of money to set up a sensory in a house.
Let me just do one final check. I don't think anything else has come up. I don't have anything, but if anyone thinks of something later, Stephanie's email is right there on the screen, or you can reach out to me and then I can get a hold of her, no problem. And then we can try to get your questions answered. But I think that's all we have for you tonight, Stephanie. Thank you so much for coming out again and speaking with us.
Thanks for having me. It's always a great time.
All right, so I'm going to sign off. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. Again, if you have questions, feel free to email.
Please do.
Have a good night, guys.